210.
This is episode number 426 of WP Watercooler. Why does it burn when I WP? I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me at Jason Tucker on Twitter.
Can you though? Can you?
You
Are
can.
you there really? I found you. Oh, hey, I'm Say Reed. I am at Say Reed Media on all things, and I am not an existential threat to WordPress. Swear.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mole Mike, back at it again on the world's most infamous WordPress podcast.
Speaking of podcasts, go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, I guess Spotify. There's a whole bunch of places you can listen to us. And you can
Tell
also
us what
watch
you think,
us.
what you really, really think. Tell
on
us
the
what you want, what you
YouTubes
really,
as
really
well.
want. Wait, if I sing that, do we have to pay copyright?
If you stop
Maybe
right
a
there,
copyright
no.
takedown. DCMA is coming for you.
Yep.
They might
So
be.
we have our friend Jon Brown on today. Hey
Friend
John,
of the
how you
show.
doing?
Hi,
All
everybody.
right.
Hi, old friends. It's been way too long.
Hello.
It has. You've been on. We're approaching our 10-year anniversary next month.
No, it boggles the mind.
I know
Crazy.
it's quite remarkable. In dog years, that's 70. So I
Wow.
figure web years are more than dog years. So basically, we're like Methuselah.
Yeah, you're like 3,000 years old.
Yeah,
Like
but
this
you were on-
WP Watercooler is older than like the birth of Christ.
yeah, basically. But you were on way back in the day.
I was
and it's-
almost regular way
I
back
know.
in the day, in like the first couple
Yeah.
years.
But then you were like
And then-
traveling and like a nomad and like going places with a life.
Oh yeah, that's why. It was really that I just became too important for you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as
yeah, yeah.
people do. As
But
people
now
do.
your importance level has dipped back down.
It,
and
it has, and now
we've
I'm
all gotten
desperate for
old.
attention again. And I'm
We've
like,
all gotten
please,
old.
please, put me back
You're
on
the I've
Watercooler.
got friends in low
People have forgotten
places.
all about me.
And
So-
it's WP Watercooler. Trust me. We're here
And
for
as you get older, you start talking about your ailments. And so we thought we would talk about why does it hurt when I
when you
There goes
WebP,
another keyboard. Say has lost another keyboard.
Going
I'm
through
glad
keyboards here.
I'm glad I timed that well.
Yeah, you did. I was not expecting that from you, Tucker. You
That
like
was
coming
brilliant.
out of the gate over here, Tucker.
Say you need to get one of those like silicone mats that covers your keyboard and keeps the liquid out of it.
And I'll just put it on there for water cooler.
Yeah, just for during WP Watercooler. You get
Cosper, do you want to start us off a little bit here on like
Wait, hold on. I gotta take a sip of coffee.
like what the heck's going on here?
Okay.
What's
okay,
going on with
so
this WebP?
It's
Last
stinking
time-
everywhere. It's stinking up the place.
last time we kind of met our friend WebP, they were going to include it into the performance team has been working on kind of some might say shoehorning, others might say
Shoving? Shoving is
others
a good
might
word.
say including WebP
ramming.
into- sure,
Forcing?
cramming, stuffing,
Strong arming.
yeah, WebP into WordPress core and
Isn't that just like a WebP?
making it effectively the default image.
WebP's always
format.
popping up where you don't want them. Just right in your face.
We're gonna.
They're just
this is
shoving the
gonna-
WebP in your face.
I just
yeah.
want, before he gets righteous, everyone, I want you to know, Cosper named this episode, so it is
Oh yeah.
100% his fault, and
Yes.
I accept no blame. Hey, you know what? Unfortunately,
Yeah.
because Steve isn't here, so no one can read Wikipedia. It's actually part of his contract.
So
we negotiated our contracts, and no one's allowed to read Wikipedia except Steve.
Except for
since
Look at
Vicus
Wikipedia.
asked in the live chat for the folks listening after the fact and listening and not watching, it was asked to define what WebP is. WebP is an image format developed by Google that is supposed to basically kind of have the best of both worlds of the PNG image format and
Transparency,
the JPEG image format, which is
low compression,
and photography. So effectively giving
good pixels, good big,
Yeah.
good pixel.
basically nice
Good.
photorealistic images, but also with transparency and compressed at a reasonable rate.
Look, folks, you can have it all.
Yeah.
You can if you use AVIF, but we'll get to that later.
No, let's get to that right now. It sounds so nice, Cosper.
Look,
it
What's
does.
the problem? Why do you feel? Why wouldn't we just open on up and let the WebP in?
Let the WebP flow.
Let the WebP flow. Why? What's your problem? Why are you so stuck up?
Poor Jason's like, this is so going off the rails. I knew this would happen when Jon came.
This is water cooler, Jon.
I did not name the episode. Claim no responsibility.
Right.
None.
So the thing about WebP and one of the big problems that folks have with it is that and I can't necessarily speak for everybody, but the sentiment definitely seems like that people are upset that Google is trying to put a thing that it developed into WordPress again, like they did with the AMP project. Like the AMP project, 5 years ago, a little bit longer maybe, but effectively.
Yeah, I mean, AMP ran through WordPress like bad shellfish, right? Like
yeah.
And there are still people trying to do good work around. I know that Weston Ritter has spent a lot of time still working at and with Google on things around the AMP project. There's some things that they don't necessarily just want to like throw away, but people kind of see this this incursion from Google and they think, okay, well, this really like only seems to benefit Google. This, there are now.
I mean, look, Google has made some good standards in their day that have improved things on the VP8, and I think we need to keep in context. WebP is a better image format than JPEG.
It is poorly named, though.
smaller file sizes with the same image quality.
Of course,
it is an advancement. It's not like it's royalty based. Google has released it so that it's not royalty based, even though some of these technologies end up very encumbered by royalties and stuff. So there is good to it. I think the question WebP is not the Antichrist by itself. It's not Google trying to. It's not. I don't think it compares with Google and AMP, in that AMP was really trying to redefine the web. WebP is just an image format. Like, use it or don't. It's up to you.
Well, I mean, so wait, but WebP is Google trying to redefine the web in terms of images, because they deal with a lot of images, and they, I think that web data and unnecessary chunks of it is something that does concern Google a lot.
But just because we use JPEG for 30 years doesn't mean we have to use it for eternity, because better things come along. Otherwise, we'd still be using bitmaps, right? Like, now, let's all go back to bitmap. We never should have switched to JPEG. Right?
I never really got TIFF.
Well,
TIFF
there is something interesting that you said about that, Jon, and it kind of goes with what Rochelle's saying in the chat. Is that, don't you hate when you go and download a file, and then the damn file is a BMP file, and you're like, where did this come from? Or there's like a TIFF, or there's some I don't know, like.
Well, so this is a question that just came through. I saw just came through in the chat, where it's well, I don't like that I can't download images. Well, don't download images from websites that you don't have permission to download. But I mean, there is an element most kind of image editors. Most image editors at this point can edit and use WebP images.
Yeah, and there's a lot of converters. I just convert stuff.
It just feels weird.
There's endless free converters on the internet.
I mean, I'm constantly frustrated by my iPhone's HEIC format. And that I move that to the desktop and have to convert that to JPEG to send it to people who don't support HEIC. There's enough tools out there, I think, to handle that, and I think WebP is widely enough supported. It makes sense to use it on the web. It's really what we ought to talk about is the implementation inside of WordPress and how it's being approached.
Yeah, well, and I think to me,
I will say, just to kind of bring a cap on it, even though it sounds like I may be slightly negative about the WebP format, I actually think that it and its inclusion in WordPress is ultimately a good thing. As somebody who has worked in web hosting for like 15 years now, I have seen people uploading, effectively they take a screenshot of something. It's saved on the Mac as a PNG, but it is a photograph, and then they upload that PNG to to their site, to a site, and use it as like the hero image on their site. And then from the support side of things, from having to help them with web performance, someone will write in and say, why is my site so slow? And then we load up the site, and there's a 4 meg PNG file that is a photograph that could probably be about 300K, sometimes maybe even like 180 kilobytes. Like, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I remember, my memory is going because I'm getting old, but I remember about 15 years ago doing that because I needed a transparent section of the image, right? And so it was a hero where I'm like, I need transparency. The only way to do transparency back there was with PNG. And so converted like a image of a flowing river, like not something you would ever want to make a PNG out of. Photograph of a flowing river, needed the transparency, turned it into a PNG, and like, yeah, it was like 3 megabytes or something when it could have been. I kind of want to see that image now, John. I don't know. They made the
I was like a transparent river hero image. Like, what was this client?
It was for a water district. It was for a water district in Northern California, and they may not have redesigned their site in 15 years. So
you should go look because I want to see the transparent river flowing in PNG.
But let's to get to what
John in the transparent river, John.
Clear WebP.
Yeah, you want to really clear
WebP clear.
And I do want to point out here, so there's, like with most things WordPress, there's really multiple issues.
Yes.
So what Jason was just saying is that he supports WebP in general, right? Like you're a fan of WebP being included in core. So in some of the early discussions we had with the core team on this, like people are like, oh, these people don't want WebP and WordPress at all. And I'm like, no. I want WebP conversions native in WordPress. I agree with that. Yeah. It ought to be in core. It's not really an issue. People bring up some kind of fringy issues of like, well, sometimes using the core tools when you convert a well-compressed JPEG to a well-compressed WebP, because you're not really going from a source image that's high res, the size can actually increase a tiny bit. Mm-hmm. To me, that's such a red herring.
We talked about this one.
Okay, like 5% of your images are going to get bigger by 1 kilobyte.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a well-compressed picture in the image in the first place, which unless you've got some sort of plugin on there or really good clients, or you're doing it yourself and take the time to do it, like most of the images.
Clients out there, let alone really good clients.
I mean, sometimes they listen. So if you have, for example, a plugin on there that's compressing stuff as they upload automatically or whatever, I haven't done any like side-by-side comparisons. Cosper, that can be a fun experiment for you. Like does like the smush image compression, like if you're using that and the WebP conversion, which by the way, is that on-offable? That's not a word. Is it optional?
Oh, yeah, this is
to
me, this is the peak controversial point.
Oh, it's not on-offable.
It's not. Core is like, oh yeah, we'll put a filter in so that people can disable it if they want to via a filter.
Yes, everyone's real good at that.
Yeah, because the people affected by this totally know how to write a filter.
If we can just put a filter in where it's not doing it, can't we just put a little button, like a check mark that activates the filter?
One little option.
Just like one more step. I guess that might not be a good use of development time.
This dovetails nicely into, I remember when the discussion around inclusion of WebP as a default was coming into WordPress 6.0. And I remember specifically one of the louder voices around, no, I don't think this is a good idea, was Otto saying that effectively, like when I take a photo and I upload it to my site, I've already picked the image format I want to use. I've already everything else, but he is the exception rather than the rule.
Not a use case.
Otto. He is okay. He is okay putting a filter in place. Otto
is like the edge case of edge cases.
Yeah.
Right. And what we're trying to focus
he knows how to do
on
literally
here,
everything in WordPress. So
Right.
I'm pretty sure he's not the right person to use as our benchmark.
As your
Right,
average
and-
user.
Yeah.
Right. What we're trying to focus on here is
You and the
43% of the web.
meme.
We're trying to focus on all of these sites that end users are using and uploading random images and
Okay,
not
does this come back
necessarily.
to
Yeah.
does this
I
come
made a
back to that
proposal.
decisions not options mantra, right? Because
No, that's
this
exactly what it is.
right. So
Yeah.
and I don't
Which
think
is the
we
most
pay enough.
misapplied mission statement in WordPress ever. Like,
That's what I was about to say. Like, we have so many like mantras or mottos, democratize publishing and open all this stuff. Like, none of them, 80% of our users need to be able to use something for it to go into core. All of these like kind of, and they're not like aphorisms, they're like nice, like little like sayings, whatever, mottos. They are so in a bad place right now with being applied.
We need Steve to look at the right word for that. Is it aphorism?
I don't know. I'll look it up some other time. But to be tweeted later. But I think that the well, I don't know what I'm saying because now I'm thinking about aphorisms.
No, there are these aphorisms that we say. I'm to use the word aphorism whether it's right or not. Like decisions.
Just put a little asterisk.
And I think they get abused the heck out of by WordPress core because like. Yeah, if you're talking about something major, decisions not options, but you're talking about something that makes sense to have an option. Like I made this proposal of like, look, WebP should be integrated into core and off by default on existing sites.
Right.
And on by default
on new sites.
Why
is all new features like that?
Which is a lot like how we introduced Gutenberg to everybody, right? Like it wasn't mandatory at first and then it became the default. Like there is precedence for releasing new features into the wild that have the potential to be severely impactful as an off by default option. And with WebP, the controversial part for me is it's like, I am sure that WebP on by default is irrelevant to the majority of sites. To 50%,
right. Majority of people using their site won't even notice ever.
Yeah, that are just blogging and have, only a gigabyte worth of images or less than that, like most sites.
People blogging.
But look, I heard somebody still is. They're very retro.
Is that a thing?
But like, I have 100 gigabyte sites. Can you imagine what happens when WooCommerce regenerates thumbnails for a 10,000 item product catalog and generates new WebP images for everything? It doubles the size of the file system. And it's like, okay, you can talk to web hosts. Like they talked to, Bluehost and a couple other and said, what percentage of sites would be affected by this? And they said, oh, it's like some portion of 1%. And it's like, sure, if you're talking about websites that are hosted on super cheap shared hosting, like Bluehost or DreamHost is good, or SiteGround or GoDaddy or whatever, right? Like
DreamHost is good.
Sure, the majority of these sites that are on cheap shared hosting aren't going to be affected by it because they're just tiny little hobby sites. But how does it affect the people who are on DigitalOcean? How does it affect the people behind load balancers on multiple servers? Like, this is going to be massively huge. And the argument is, well, we're going to provide a filter. So, yeah, this is why we had the argument a year ago about auto updates. When everyone's like, no auto updates, you're going to destroy my site. And it's mostly been okay. But then you fear features like this getting rolled out as on by default that will have significant impacts to file storage size.
I think that there is a sense that I get that there are some folks within core development, I won't say who, but they're impatient, which is funny because like we all feel like we've been all very patient for so many features and so many things that we've been talking about we want to get to. But nonetheless, like there's really an impatience for just moving on to this, especially within the core group. And I do respect, I know that from a lot of the leadership, we have had a backwards compatibility focus. And so thinking about, the bulk of people with a site or the people with small business sites or whatever it is, right? So people, I appreciate that we have in theory, a big appreciation and care for those people and their sites and their use of WordPress. But then that conflicts with the developers who are developing core And whether they work for Google or another big company or whatever it is, they're just like chomping at the bit trying to get, to shove this stuff in. And I think the problem is the decisions, not options, becomes a weapon to force people to do things because it's the right thing to do. The developers at the time think it's the right thing to do. But the problem with that is not that they're leading the masses to the right thing, but when we lock ourselves in, we are locking ourselves in for the future. Like with React, for example, like we make a choice and that's the choice that we have to stick with. So like if we, if we add on WebP now, and now we have all of this, like all of the sites now have WebP for like every, picture that they've ever uploaded. Now we've created all this more stuff and going more in this direction of WebP. And then when the next thing comes along, do we lurch over to that and then make copies of all of that stuff as well? So like, this is why I think the decisions, not options thing can be really dangerous, because it restricts the flow and the ability of WordPress to respond to the technologies that creep up, pop up, and by latching on to something so strongly, it really it locks us in there.
So you all still live in California, all three of you, like me.
Yeah.
And that like we have a proposition, we have a citizens proposition on the ballot thing. And I swear that like every proposition that gets passed, they're like, it's for the children or it's for the firefighters, right? And it's like, no matter what the bill is, if you say it's decisions on options, it's weaponized, right? Just like it's for the children. You can't vote against children.
Yeah, vote against children.
You can't vote, or it's for the teachers. Like it's weaponizing of these phrases to get whatever way you want.
Yeah.
And I think it's a big problem, especially when decisions not options comes up, because it really is used to justify whatever you want to do.
Right.
In the WordPress space.
And they're like, we're making the decision and taking away the option. Right. It's the I don't know. I'm in a place like, for other purposes within the Twitter timeline or whatever. WordPress is who is making the decisions within these core decisions is becoming an ever increasing.
It used to mean like, let's not make things overly complicated.
Right.
So that it's easy to write. Right. But then Gutenberg is overly complicated, which makes it hard to write, but we're getting used to it. But like, we're literally talking about a single option that's on a setting page on the media settings page. Like it's not, it doesn't make anything complicated to have that option there at all.
No, it in fact simplifies many things.
Wouldn't complicate the code, wouldn't complicate the UI, wouldn't complicate usage. There's no complexity here to be avoided other than, well, we think we have a moral high ground on it.
Can you?
I want to come back to something really important you said, which is.
Can you change that real quick? Can you think of a reason, or do you have a theory of why what is seemingly a very easy choice to provide is what the reasoning is for not providing that?
Yes, I can answer that.
Okay, good. Because
it is completely an assumption. It's not based on any fact. But if I was to infer from the situation and what I've seen, they think, meaning those people that are advocating for it, that it is extremely important for the environmental impact of the web in terms of reducing file sizes to make sure that this rolls out to as many people as possible. I think that's the core of it. Is that
are those people Google sponsored contributors? I
don't know. I don't really pay attention
a number of them are. I know that a lot of people in the Make WordPress performance team have been employed at one point or another by Google. But it is people from a lot of different backgrounds. I know the Yoast folks are very involved there as well.
Yeah.
So
no, I mean, look, if you can reduce the total bandwidth of 43% of the web by 10%, that has an impact, right? Like that is significant. Nobody is saying that should be completely ignored, but forcing it upon every single site by default seems wrong to me. But I think the other thing that's getting missed here in the decisions on options conversation is, what about the future? Because while WebP is a good image format, it is better than JPEG in 99% of the cases. We have AVIF, which is another image format that's also open source, not royalty encumbered, that is substantially better that we're all going to move to in 4 or 5 years.
This is my exact point. That was my exact point of my long monologue.
I know. That's why I remembered. I knew you were going.
Thank you.
But it's like, so what do we do then? Like, why aren't we planning ahead right now? Plan ahead for AVIF and be like, what we need to do is give people tools to control their image formats.
Yeah, like if we worked on the functionality of the image system, maybe even like reconsidered some of the, like, we're making 3 copies of everything every time. Like maybe that's something that should be discussed.
Oh no, like, see, to me that should have been solved before this, right? It's like,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like that's exactly what I'm saying. So we're like solving and this is what I think we do, and this is also part of the discussion that I believe is happening in a parallel place on Twitter, is that the need to move forward is like glossing over and skipping over some of these fundamental issues that would make WordPress as a whole better, long-term, short-term, for developers, for users. And what I'm really struggling to wrap my mind around is why, like what the motivation for that is, instead of making it better. And maybe it's just the threat of Wix and Squarespace and all of that, Shopify nipping at the heels, but we're still in a place where we're like, oh, it's going to be a couple years for Gutenberg. So if it's going to be a couple years, or for full site editing, so if it's going to be a couple years anyway, why don't we just develop it over here and let those couple years happen, and then, launch it when we're not all going to like have mega problems about it.
No, look, I kid you not, in I think it was 2012, maybe 2010, WordCamp Vancouver / Buddy Camp. I was pretty new to the WordPress world, and I was like, the media library sucks. We need to rebuild the media library. And Andrew Dason was on stage and answered my question. He was like, it would take a long time to do, but you're probably right, it's not very good. And I'm like,
would it take 10 years?
12,
do you think if we had started then, we could be done
10,
by
12 years later? I'm like, almost no improvement whatsoever to the image, the media library. There have been some image editing things, GT Magic, Image Magic, all of this. Like, I don't want to poo-poo the fact that there's been some improvements around the edges, and I think WebP would be an improvement around the edge. But it comes back to what Say said, where it's like, why are we pre-generating 15 thumbnails for every image that gets uploaded? This is a fundamental problem. Right. And now what we're saying is we want to support both formats, so not generate 15 thumbnails, but generate 30. And then you talk to Core and they're like, well, no theme is generating 15 thumbnails. I'm like, have you worked on a real site?
No, they
because
haven't.
Sure,
sorry,
I have a theme that only generates 7, but then I have a plugin that adds 3 more and another plugin that adds 4 more. And like, I have sites that have 15 thumbnails.
And everyone made the decision that you could not turn those off without like some serious manipulating in the code.
Right, because people mistakenly thought for performance reasons that you had to have the pixel perfect image size, and they still come up in your web performance results, right? If your image is scaled at all in the browser, like, you get a warning. Look, people, it makes no difference at this point. It made a difference 20 years ago when computers were really, really slow and browser
all the
performance
same
really mattered.
size.
But I'm like, scaling your image from 200 by 300 to 220 by 330. No one cares at this point.
Right.
Yeah,
except for some web performance tool, right?
We're like on Instagram sharing screenshots of Twitter with a Tumblr comment that's a screenshot of another Instagram with
because at this point it's all responsive
like T-Mobile
too,
thing
right?
on top.
Like, it's all max width 100%, it's all responsive, and it's always going to be scaled. You don't need pixel perfect sizes. You just need properly compressed a couple of sizes. Like, picture tag with multiple sources.
And if we took the time, because this is us, if WordPress, we took the time to create this option, for example, with WebP, which is going into core, perhaps then that model could be followed for other plugins, themes, and whatever, to make their sizing optional. Even to make, like, do you want to keep your thumbnails at 150 by 150? To just turn those things off by default.
What's interesting is that, go ahead, Drew.
Okay, I was going to say, I really want WebP, but it's one of these thinking fast and moving slow things that WordPress could benefit from, where, okay, WebP is made available, like we said, in a progressive enhancement. So new installs, get it right out of the box. Old installs, it's an option that you can turn on. And then when we hit WordPress 6.2, 6.3, and we revisit the adoption rate, we revisit all of these other things, then it's like, okay, any new image uploaded to existing WordPress sites, as long as a new image format has not come along, look at when, and I don't mean to discount what happened with the REST API, but the REST API got included in core, and what did everyone start moving to all of a sudden? GraphQL. So, hey, great, WordPress has a REST API, but to get GraphQL results out of things, you have to install a plugin, and it just starts all over again. What are we going to do? Add GraphQL to WordPress core?
We're just never happy.
We have such a gift of so many minds in our community, which really gives us a foresight, an ability. We have so much data. If we would look at it and not, I visited Facebook's campus one time, and they had all these like weird dystopian sayings all over, including one that says every day is like a week. I don't want every day to feel like a week, but okay. And their other big, one of Facebook's big mottos is move fast and break things. And it's like, why? Why are we following this other entity, which is so opposite of all of the ethos of WordPress? But we're just like, oh, well, they're doing it, by the way, going down, failing.
Right.
Its peak is over. And somehow we're still like, they had some good ideas. Let's move fast and break things. It seemed to work for them. But like it's in direct, like we just need to really kind of get back to our ethos, even with something, because when you have a good ethos, you can apply it even to something like WebP. You can apply it to the choices that we're making as we move forward, and that's what they're there for. The values, the ethos. We need to use them.
Bring us home, Tucker.
We're out. Talk to y'all later.
What?
You have a good one. Bye-bye. Look, folks, we like our file extensions to have 3 characters, not 4. Go over to WPwatercooler.com/subscribe and subscribe to this content. We really appreciate it.
And then subscribe.
We're an audio podcast as well as a video show, so feel free to go over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and watch us over on YouTube. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.
Watch for the visual